Welcome into NBA Now. I am your host, Tom Downey, here to break down everything going on around the association today, including some news and some interesting trade rumors around the NBA. Let's go to Demarcus Cousins, where his time in Houston, it's over. The two sides are set to part ways, The Rockets, though, going to do at least a nice solid here too, Boogie, and will guarantee the rest of his salary this season. Houston's decided to go smaller and younger. The smaller part, pretty ironic given some recent moves they've made with their organization. There will be some contenders who have interest in Demarcus Cousins. The unfortunate reality is the big man is no longer the same guy he was back in his prime. The injuries have piled up, and although he can still contribute, specifically probably more in a 10-ish minute per game role, giving him 20 minutes per game, starting him as Houston was doing with Christian Wood banged up, I think it was pretty obvious he just didn't have enough left. He can still shoot from three at least, the overall field goal percentage dropping significantly. The defensive issues, he was never great defensively, but those defensive issues become compounded with the injury problems. So he's no longer a superstar center. He's probably not someone you want starting either, but he can be a backup big man. So some potential Demarcus Cousins destinations to keep an eye out for. The Miami Heat, seemingly linked to every single player that becomes potentially available. The Boston Celtics, someone we've linked to Boogie for years now. Maybe they finally show interest on that front. The Brooklyn Nets are intriguing. They could use another big man. I do wonder if the presence of James Harden, however, could actually be a detriment, since it didn't appear that Cousins and Harden got along too well once Harden made it clear he didn't want to be in Houston any longer. The Portland Trailblazers have some big men banged up. That makes some sense. And, of course, the Los Angeles Lakers as well, who we'll go more in depth with here in just a second. Before we do, this is the pinned comment on today's video. What team will Demarcus Cousins play for next? Is it the Lakers, Celtics, somebody else altogether? If you get the ad break here on YouTube, scroll on down and get your votes in. Let's focus now on the Cousins-Lakers connection here. Kevin O'Connell of The Ringer says that the Lakers will be among the teams that go after Cousins and try to add him to their team. Now, of course, this would not be the first time Boogie's been a member of the LA Lakers, although maybe it'll be the first time he actually gets to play. Signed with them back in 2019, as I'm sure you guys all know. Never actually played a game, though, due to a torn ACL. I believe the two sides parted on fairly good terms. That they released Cousins, but he was allowed to work out at the facility, to get healthy, all of that. And the Lakers could use another big man. And in terms of potential upside of maybe he recaptures his old form or gets closer to it, and there's no better option on the market right now than Cousins. And Marc Gasol is playing the starting center role, I guess. He's really kind of a rotation piece. Montrezl Harrell plays plenty as well. There's Markieff Morris on the roster. Not a whole lot else, though, in terms of actual big men. So, assuming Cousins eventually gets bought out by the Houston Rockets, that starts to make some sense. He's not going to cost anything in terms of a trade. So, from the cost perspective, it's pretty darn cheap. From the upside perspective, well, it makes some sense, and the team knows him pretty well on top of that. So I actually like the idea of a reunion between Boogie and the Lakers a lot. But get your votes in here. What do you guys want to do? Should the Lakers add Cousins once he's inevitably waived? Type in 1 for yes, or type in 0 for no. To PJ Tucker now, the Rockets willing to trade him before the NBA trade deadline, and the Lakers are among the teams that have interest. Should not come as a surprise at all. The Lakers are going to be linked to almost every single relatively cheap player on the trade block this year. Now, Tucker offensively doesn't offer much. He averaged about a little under 5 points per game this year. He's shooting below 33%, although just barely. The interest in Tucker has nothing to do with the offensive prowess he offers, because there's not very much. The interest in Tucker comes down to him being one of the premier, and I still think top 5, at worst top 10, defenders on the wing in the NBA. He continues, despite his advanced age, to be awesome in that particular role. And if you're a team like the Lakers and you're thinking, okay, we're going to meet the Clippers probably at some point in the Western Conference semis or at some point in the playoffs regardless. We might run into the Bucks or the Nets in the NBA Finals. You want a really talented swingman defender to hold up against a Kawhi, a Paul George, a Giannis, or a Harden or a Durant. So that makes sense to me. Now, the Lakers are not the only team mentioned by ESPN in terms of potentially having interest in a trade. The Miami Heat, they were connected. The Milwaukee Bucks, Brooklyn Nets, and Lakers were the four mentioned by Woj. And that certainly makes sense because, well, those are four contending teams, and the Rockets are willing to sell. Now, what I do want to make note of, why this is intriguing, is the report was that the Rockets want a player, not draft picks. They want a player back in exchange for PJ Tucker. So, SB Nation's Laker page put together this trade. I'm not sure how you Lakers fans are going to like it because Tucker's decently expensive. So you'd have to move the money to make it work out. Here's what they put together. Kyle Kuzma, Alfonso McKinney, and Jared Dudley go to Houston. Now, McKinney and Dudley, well, duh, right? Kuzma, though, who the Lakers just paid, I'm not sure that's all that intriguing. So who says no? Type in L for the Lakers or type in R for the Rockets. Maybe if they could move a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope instead, that makes some sense. However, the issue is Caldwell-Pope actually costs more than Kuzma right now, and the Rockets would have to give up more money to make the salary cap math actually work out in the end. So it's a little bit dicey. That's why I'm not actually sure Tucker makes the most sense in the end for LA, just because the convoluted cap to make it all work out. I hope everyone out there is staying safe. If you're not and you need more masks, go get one today at chatsports.com/NBA masks. Have them for every single NBA team, including the Lakers there. See them on your screen. Chatsports.com/NBA mask. That link, which I will put in the comments and in the description, will save you guys 75% off. Not every single mask option is that discounted, but there are a lot of them. So go check it out today at chatsports.com/NBA mask. You can save up to 75% and rep your favorite team while you're staying safe out there. Let's go to Bradley Beal, who always has trade rumors around him, and today it's the Knicks potentially involved. The report from New York radio, ESPN radio host Michael Kay, says that Knicks executive William Wesley, a.k.a. Worldwide West, is trying to recruit Beal to the Knicks via back channels. I love this league. Now, it shouldn't come as a surprise, right? Because, the entire NBA is like, oh, I would love to get Bradley Beal. He's awesome. He's balling out despite the Wizards being bad at basketball. Again, putting up almost 33 points per game, averaging 5 rebounds, almost 5 assists, shooting on a pretty high volume, still over 33% from deep. He continues to be one of the best players in one of the worst situations in the NBA. So naturally, the Knicks and Worldwide West are trying to recruit him over there. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it's at least worth trying. So the report that came out of this from the New York Daily News, who also mentioned what a GM said was the asking price, or at least what the value would be, was going to be a young player, an expiring contract, 3 first-round picks, and 2 first-round pick swaps. Well, the Knicks can make that happen. So here's my trade proposal based on that evaluation from the alleged NBA GM. R.J. Barrett goes to the Wizards. I know that's a very promising young player, but you're hoping you become maybe a Bradley Beal type if you're lucky. Maybe you just take Bradley Beal instead. Frank Ntilikina helps make the money work out. 3 first-round picks, 2 first-round pick swaps. The Knicks can do that. They got 5 first-round picks over the next 3 years. They could absolutely do it. So in terms of the potential offers for Bradley Beal, that one's actually not that bad. Maybe the Knicks would do it. Maybe they wouldn't. And Beal continues to push publicly that he's fine in Washington. He doesn't want to demand a trade right now. At some point, you would think Bradley Beal's going to wake up and go, God, I'm tired of this. We're so bad. Get me out of here. I love you, Washington. He's tried. They just can't build around him successfully, at least not so far. So will Bradley Beal end up being traded? Type in Y for yes or type in N for no. Get your votes in for me down in the comments section. Let's go to Blake Griffin now, who, well, it's very quiet around him. As I'm sure many of you guys know, Blake Griffin sitting right now as the Pistons explore exactly what they're going to do with the one-time NBA superstar. The Pistons have already announced, hey, you know what, we're going to sit him, we're going to explore moves. The contract is very difficult to trade. To like $36 million the rest of this year and $39 million next year. That's a ton of money for a player who is no longer the Blake Griffin we all knew and enjoyed watching. He's shooting just 36.5% from the field this year. That's terrible. 12.2 points per game. The defense is not as good. The injuries have piled up for Griffin, and unfortunately, he's not the superstar player. And that contract is very difficult to move, and the Pistons would have to take back a big salary. There aren't that many players that make sense for both parties involved. A buyout in the end, I think, is the most likely outcome for both Griffin, the Pistons, and a future team for Blake. So make your predictions for me down there in the comments section. Where will Blake Griffin end up finishing this season? Is it still in Detroit? Probably not. Is there a different contender out there? Let me know what you guys think in the comments section.